Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and it is my esteemed pleasure to welcome two wonderful and inspirational speakers where we are talking about arts for health. It is really wonderful to have Marlize Swanepoel here and Unai Conradi, and I would like to quickly introduce them before they are going to speak about what the arts do to heal our learners and to help our learners. So I'm going to ask Marlize and Unai to just start their videos and unmute themselves. And let me start off. Hello, Marlize. So nice to see you. Wonderful. Our power was off in Stellenbosch, and we're back on again. I think it's maybe the same with you. So we say hallelujah. So Marlize Swanepoel, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, friends, kindred spirits, is a drama therapist. I think that's my dream job, to be honest. But yeah, and she's a director and co-founder of the SPIEEL Arts Therapies Collective. So wonderful, Marlize. So warm welcome to you. We can't wait to listen to you today. And then we have Unai Conradi, who is a sister of mine. I've adopted her a long time ago already. And Unai is an applied drama practitioner, and she's the co-director of the SPIEEL Arts Therapies Collective. We can't wait to listen to you. So I'm going to ask you, if you're ready, let's get going and let's hear all you have to say about arts and our emotional and mental health. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Anina, thank you for the most warm and fuzzy welcome I've ever had, and yes, and just that hat just sets the tone completely for a Friday afternoon. Thank you, Thank you so much. You look beautiful, and spring has arrived. So yes, so hello from a sunny Cape Town, because spring has indeed arrived with Anina's gorgeous hat. We are going to try and be very concise in weaving in a little bit of theory to support this theme of the arts in health and the arts in health and well-being practice, because this time of day and who we are and the kind of work we do, really we would love for you to experience some of that with us. So we're going to invite a gentle experiential process alongside, and if you are comfortable, please join us, because there's something about being and doing something together that is different than just talking, especially when we speak about an embodied practice and what happens to the body and our nervous systems when we engage with the arts. So I've already said more than I intended to do. But if we could bring up our PowerPoint, and at some point Unai will also come in and join me. Going back to green, it will make sense in a moment. There you are, Unai, I'm glad to see your face. Going back to green, speaking about returning, helping our nervous systems to regulate, to down-regulate, to find our feet on the floor. And I'm going to stop speaking and invite you to do that with me. Just from where you are, if you can take a moment to feel your body in its chair or on the floor or wherever you may be. See if you can find your feet and just bring your focus and your attention to the soles of your feet. And won't you rub your hands together, rub the palms of your hands together, and maybe deepen your breath, sigh it out. And have this awareness of the heat that we are all generating together in this virtual room. And then when you are ready, gently place the palms of your hand on your heart space. And we're just going to take a moment to experience the sensation of holding our hearts with each other on this Friday afternoon. Consciously deepen your breath, and as you do so, see where there are places in your body that you can soften and let go, and help yourself to arrive in this room after a full day already, and give yourself permission to be here fully, mind, body and heart, just for a few moments. And working with what we have in front of us, I'd like to invite you again to just time a little bit slower. Rub your hands together as if they are made from clay. And just see if there is maybe a shape or a symbol to emerge that says something of how you are in the world today. However you want it to be. And I wish we could see everyone's shapes. I know that that's not possible right now, but from this place, is there a word or a sound that you can add to this image that you've made? And just note that for yourself. Something of a symbol that shares a bit of who you are and how you are in the world at this moment. If we do this again an hour later, it might be different. Right now, this is something of me. And then gently let that go. And I'm going to ask if we can go to the second slide. Our name as SPIEEL Arts Therapies Collective, the idea of a SPIEEL is this, what we've just done. It's some kind of symbol or metaphor or image that mirrors back something to us of how we are in the world. It's using the arts to understand us in relation to each other and the world. And it's also a word, it's playing on the word play. And as adults, we've been trying to figure this out for the longest time. And how we understand play at the moment is to be fully present, body, mind, and heart. So Yunei and I have been introduced so beautifully, and we also would just like to add that our collective is made up of applied arts practitioners and arts therapists who are registered with the HPCSA, and also community arts facilitators. And you can go to the next slide, please, from this brief introduction to our vision. It's so lovely to have someone holding the slides for us. Our vision is to build community models of mental health care that create a greater access to arts-based psychosocial support. So we understand specifically in South African context, and we are also waking up to the wider context of the global South, that therapy and mental health and support and well-being does not only have to happen in clinical spaces or in therapy rooms, but it belongs amongst us, and it's part of our day-to-day circles of support. And that the arts is an innate human practice to take care of our own mental health and well-being. We can go to the next slide, please. So Renee Phillips, who's an artist and a coach, is saying that the medical profession has come a long way in recognizing the healing benefits of art. And my hope is that someday the arts will be considered as essential in everyone's lives, as breathing fresh air, eating clean foods, and engaging in physical exercise. So Renee is an American practitioner, and we understand that South African people, the community of the global South, have been using the arts for healing through song and dance and ritual and movement and storytelling since time began. And finally, the Western world is waking up to that, or is catching on. We'd like to briefly share on the next slide, please, something of our approach. And this is just a nugget. So we speak to collective resilience, where people are each other's greatest resources, and that the resilience of a community, not just the pressure on one person to be resilient enough to overcome and withstand, but the resilience of the collective is where we find social change happening. Something about being able as a collective to address oppression and institutes and contexts that are harmful. Our work is trauma-informed, and we'll say more about that later, so I'm not going to sit with that now. It's strength-based, not just treating symptoms, not just looking at the pathology or diagnosis, but also making space for the inherent strengths strengths and protective factors and strengthening and developing those that are already there. It's a culturally humble practice that understands that people have different way in languaging and understanding and experiencing their mental health that is not just situated within the medical model of practice. And with all of that, we advocate for a global South approach to mental health care. Next slide, please. In bringing this work into the context of this conference and schools, in our school programs, we look at the mental health and well-being of teachers and also what it means to have trauma-informed classrooms. And Yune will speak more to that a little bit later as well. I'm aware I'm rushing, but I'm also aware of our little time. So next slide, please. And please bring more questions so we can dialogue. So we chose this slide to really share something of our position of how we understand trauma. I'm not able to see the top two lines, but I'm going to ask you to read that, and then I'll speak back to it in a moment. This is Nomfundo Mugabe, a clinical psychologist in Johannesburg, and she speaks of wounding as a way to understand trauma. And this idea that our institutions, our schools, so many of the spaces we navigate every day are traumatized spaces, or spaces where we react to each other. And she's saying, let us tend to these wounds, because if we also understand our country's history and past, we understand that these unattended wounds continue to bleed onto the generations that never caused them in the first place. And this is also a beautiful way of describing that that different people experience trauma in different ways, and it's not the event that happened, but it's what remained, what stays behind, the wound that is there. Thank you. We can go to the next slide. And a nugget of framing this idea of woundedness and trauma in what happens in the body. There's beautiful authors out there, Bessel van der Kolk amongst them, speaking about the body keeps the score. And we understand that if these wounds are stuck or situated in our bodies, how does that make us react? Professor Stephen Porges came up with this concept of Polyvagal Theory, and I'll briefly speak us through it. But if you bring your attention to the green zone, the place of safety and connection, that is where we started with our breath and our bodies at the start of this session. That is the place where we feel most calm, most regulated, most relaxed. And from that place, we are able to speak clearly and to think clearly, and to connect and to be open and curious to the world. But when our autonomous nervous system detects a threat, our sympathetic nervous system kicks in and we become upregulated and we go into what is called the fight or flight zone. And that's a whole spectrum from being slightly annoyed to full-on rage. And when those responses doesn't take the threat away, we down-regulate with our parasympathetic nervous system all the way down to a freezing and a withdrawing. In the wild, in nature, we see animals freeze when they are caught, when their predators are nearby. People freeze by becoming numb or withdrawn or dissociated within some trauma symptoms. What we can do is to help our nervous systems regulate back up into the green zone. And if that is the one thing that we can share with you this afternoon, is how does this practically look like in our classrooms and through some arts-based activities? Because in itself, this system is perfect. It's the most ancient coping mechanism of human beings, of how we keep ourselves safe. But we are interested in what happens when that shock and trauma stays in the body and we misread the cues. And I think this is, where I'd like to invite you speak to us of what that cues look like in the classroom, what some examples are that we might see. That's okay.
Yes, thank you, Marlize. Will you give me an indication? Can you hear me? Is it good?
Yes, yes,
Okay, great.
yes, perfect, thanks.
Um, so what does this look like in the classroom when you are upregulated or downregulated? This might look, can we please go back to the previous slide? Sorry. Oh, yeah, thank you. So it might look like that child that you can't motivate them to be interested in the lesson or in the lecture. So they appear completely disinterested. They might be lying on their arms. I mean, how rude, how rebellious. And so we might have a reaction to that. This is so disrespectful to me. And the more you try and motivate them to take part, the more they withdraw, and it's not working. And this is because actually it's not a conscious decision that they're making because of whatever. Maybe something that happened in the classroom, maybe something that happened in the home. That child is not regulated. And so it's a nervous system response, which means it's an automatic response. It's not something that they can control, and we cannot snap them out of it like this. So that's one example, the child lying on their arms. Another example is that child on the playground that keeps on getting into fights. And you have the conversations with the child about their future and not doing this and having empathy. But when you hear again that child is in a fight, that child is in a fight. And this is very possibly also the same. It's not a choice. It's an automatic response. It might be the child that when you ask a question in the classroom, can't answer you. They just look at you. And that's a freeze response. Once again, it's not a conscious decision. They're not. It's not because they didn't do their homework or because they're not intelligent necessarily or because they want to be defiant. It's a freeze response. It's an automatic response. And so maybe you can think now to if you think about your own body and how do you respond when you are in fight or flight mode, when you don't make the decision to respond that way, but your body has an automatic reaction. What are your responses? And maybe relate that to things that you might see in your classroom that can be interpreted differently, but that's actually an automatic response. I hope that makes sense. We can always continue this discussion on the app or on email. But so now we can go to the next slide. And this is about the triggers in the classroom. So what are the things that might happen at school or in the class or in the workplace that kicks a student or a fellow teacher or yourself into this automatic response? And it can be something as simple as the lights going dim. It can be a safety drill or an alarm. It can be a specific class assignment. Bring a baby picture. I don't have any baby pictures. Or my dad tore up the baby pictures. We don't know what happened, but you understand. Specific reading material, something is happening to Sophie. Sophie's being bullied. We want to teach kids about bullying, but that triggers another child to go into automatic response or a teacher. A noisy and busy environment even. And situations of shame or fear, such as a test or being reprimanded. And so, I'll talk about it now, but it's not that we are saying, please, it's not that we are saying, so avoid all of these circumstances. That is impossible. Life goes on. We have assignment and we read stories. It's just about being aware of how many things can trigger students, and also to begin to be aware of what can trigger you. And then I also want to add, I'm so aware of time, but I also want to add that we also do this work with students. So we explain this to them, the nervous system and the triggers. And you must see their faces light up when they realize, I am not broken, I'm not a bad apple, I am not stupid. I understand now why my body responds that way. And just the understanding of it, not the taking away of all triggers, is already very powerful. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. I'll talk about the hearing and the speech a bit later. So now what? We have all these triggers, and luckily we also have what we call, it's not our term, we borrowed it from someone that I can't remember now. Their name is at the bottom. But do you want to say, Marlize?
Dana.
We borrowed,
yes.
Yeah, we borrowed the word glimmers from her, a beautiful word. And these are the things that help you regulate again, that brings you back to grief. Yes. And so one of the most important things is in a classroom setup is that the teacher shows up in green. If I show up in a dysregulated state from maybe what happened in a previous class or what happened at home, I have no hope of regulating my classroom and holding my students. So I have to show up in green every time with every class. I need to show up in green. It's about connecting in positive ways. So building that relationship with your learners where they see you as a safe person. It's just like I said previously about being aware. Now you know, and that already is a lot. And being present so that you can notice what is going on in your students. Oh, okay, I see I'm losing someone there. Okay, now I understand why she's suddenly refusing to take her books out of her school bag. Maybe there's something going on there. And in yourself, oh dear, okay, this child is really taking me into red right now. So just being present to all of these things going on and responding sensitively. And then having a toolkit, a regulating toolkit, and we'll start working on that in the very next section. And part of a regulating toolkit, we just want to say, is co-regulating. And that's so beautiful because we're social creatures. We're meant to be together. And our nervous systems mirror each other. So you can regulate someone by being calm and regulated yourself. And Marlize does that so often for me. Seeing her sitting there breathing is helping me catch my breath and to calm my heart rate. So even virtually we can co-regulate each other. It's a beautiful tool to have. So all of this is just to say, maybe we can reframe how we think about behaviors that are challenging. And instead of thinking, how can I manage this behavior? We can think, how can I connect with the child? How can I empathize and understand, see it from their perspective, and stand next to them, alongside them, so that I can get them regulated. And from there, we can move on. So let's see what this might look in practice. We can go to the next slide. So it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. We use the 3 R's response approach that we once again borrowed from Jessica Lang, or adapted from Jessica Lang. And this is to mitigate trauma. So just to clarify, it's not about trauma counseling. This is to mitigate trauma symptoms. And the 3 R's are regulate, you heard that word over and over again now. Relate, which is about relationship, and reflect, and that is about learning and creating new narratives, new stories for ourselves. We can go to the next slide. I just want to know, do we have a chat box? I don't see a chat box.
Yes, we do. We have quite a few chats in the chat box, and we also have a few Q&As. But with that, I just wanted to say that we only have 2 more minutes, but we're going into the break. So, you know, we have a little break of a few more minutes. So I think if we, yeah, just so that you know that we are getting close to the end. I know.
Okay, there's no time for chatting. Good. So now I know. So regulate is about an invitation to be present. And let's do a quick activity. Look around you and see if you can find an item. Pick up the first item that draws your attention. Can you see? I'm picking up a candle. And just pay close attention to that candle. Its weight, its texture, its shape. And then how does this object mirror something of what you are feeling in the moment? And just note that for yourself. So regulating is about coming mind, body, and heart into the present moment. And one easy thing is through the senses, through touch. Sometimes you might want to do it through smell, through hearing. This activity is through touch. So just think about how you might start your lessons with an activity that brings the learners into the present moment, because that will regulate them. And then you can start your session or your lesson with a regulated group. Next slide, please. Now I want to ask you to take this item and to turn it into something that is magical. Something that is magical and that's going to change your life. It's going to change something for you. So I'm changing this object. This candle is not a candle anymore. This candle is a light that shines on all of my fears. And as soon as it shines on my fears, it disappears, because there can't be any darkness in the light. What are you turning your object into? And if we had the option and the time, I would have said share it in the chat box. And how would that change our perspective of each other? How are we going to get to know each other in a different way with a simple activity? And that is why being creative, using symbols, using stories and little objects like this can really help you to build a relationship with your learners, so that there's an environment of trust in your classroom. So just think about how you might incorporate this in the warm-up of your lesson or in the introduction of your lesson once your group is regulated. Next slide. And that's the last slide. Are we done? Just one last thing.
Yes, absolutely. 2 more minutes, and then we unfortunately have to close. I'm so sorry.
Okay. No, 2 more minutes is plenty. So the next thing is to reflect. And that is an invitation to discover and to learn. So if you place your magical item into your hands, and you think you started the session, what you might have felt, and how holding this magical object in your hands, how does that change how you are feeling, how you might see what you are experiencing, what changes for you? And just note that for yourself. And that is just to say that only after you're regulated, only after you feel safe, can you learn and can you discover new things. So just think about how you might incorporate that in your lesson. And then you're welcome to catch us on WOVA and ask questions, and we would love to answer you, or you can email us. Yes.
Thank you so much, Yune and Marlize. This was incredible. And you know what? We could have gone on and on and on until I think the whole weekend. I think we should do a whole weekend of this topic. Let's do a whole conference.
Yes, please.
I really want to
Yes.
say thank you very much, Yune and Marlize. And you will see, colleagues, that they have already answered quite a lot of questions in the Q&A box on your side, on the site. So please ask your questions, make contact with SPIEEL Collective, and you will definitely not be sorry, because they add so much value to what we do in the classroom. We unfortunately do not have time to talk more, but I want to really thank the two of you. You really brought another flavor to today's conference, and may you be blessed, and we'll see you soon again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anina, and thanks everybody. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Thank you so much. So now we have a quick break. Our break is we have another 6 minutes until 4:50, and then I'm going to ask everyone to just click on the agenda again and go to the main program. There's lots more. We are going to talk about maths and music and the arts, and we are going to talk about careers and entrepreneurship and many, many more aspects of the arts this afternoon. So grab a quick coffee and join us again at 4:50. Click on the main agenda, and we will continue with a very exciting program for the rest